My name is Aaron Donovan. I'm 67 years old, a retired nurse. I've lived on Magnolia Street in Chicago's South Side for 44 years. From the day I married at 22, through my husband's death, to the day my daughter got married. This street has held my whole life. And the old magnolia tree at the corner, planted after the Great Chicago Fire of 1871, has seen all of it too. My daughter, Bridget, climbed that tree as a kid and fell hard enough to scar her knee. She still jokes that the tree owes her a scar. We never thought that one day the tree would be cut down and the whole street would be erased with it. 3 months ago, a developer called Lakefront Partners, backed by a relative of the mayor, posted eviction notices, $120 per square foot. Neighbors talked. I stood at the back of the crowd. Something in my chest felt off. That night, Bridget came home with red eyes. She walked in and hugged me, shaking. She told me her husband, Kevin, had forced her to sign the demolition agreement on my behalf. The cup in my hand almost fell. That house is mine. My name is on the deed. I rolled up her sleeve. There were dark bruises around her wrist, clear finger marks. She had been living with abuse for 5 years, and I never knew. I swallowed my anger, held her hand. The agreement can wait, I said. You're staying here for now. The next morning, I went straight to the developer's office. The receptionist was a young man named Chris, glasses, fast talk, like a machine gun. He told me the agreement had been signed by a direct family member. Under Illinois law, that counts. The compensation had already been transferred to Bridget's bank account. That's my house, I said. And I never received the money. I placed the deed on his desk. My name was printed clearly on it. Chris pulled out the agreement. The signature looked like mine, but I knew instantly it wasn't. The last stroke in my E is straight. Bridget's is curved. I asked for a handwriting analysis and the cancellation of an invalid contract. Chris's expression changed immediately. He pointed to a small line at the bottom, Section 7. It said a proxy signature counts as authorization. Legally, my daughter had the right to sign for me. I walked out with a copy of the agreement and stood under the old magnolia tree. Sunlight filtered through the leaves, broken like glass. Old Frank, the retired history teacher, came over. He adjusted his glasses and read the document slowly. Then he sighed. This is a predatory clause. Legally, it's complicated. They might win, we might lose. That night, I couldn't sleep. I heard Bridget crying in the next room. She kept whispering, Mom, I'm sorry. I stood by the doorway, my hands shook. Tears kept falling before I could stop them. And I kept wiping them away, over and over again. I decided not to hire a lawyer. Not because I couldn't afford one, but because the compensation hadn't even reached me yet. I couldn't afford to go into debt for my own house. I was going to do it myself. I went to the public library and borrowed thick books on Illinois property law and contract law. Every night, I sat under a lamp and read. I knew many of the words, but when they were put together, they stopped making sense. So I highlighted the important parts in yellow and marked the confusing parts with question marks in pencil. Old Frank came to visit. He flipped through my notes, full of underlines and scribbles. You're really putting in the work, he said. I gave a tired smile. I don't have anyone to do it for me, he nodded, then asked about handwriting analysis. The next day he told me it would cost $350. An extra $100 for expedited service. $350 was my monthly living expenses. $100 was 2 months of blood pressure medication. I hesitated for a long time. Then I went to the bank and withdrew $450. At the forensic lab, a young technician asked me to write my name over and over again on blank sheets of paper. 10 times. 15 times. My hands started to cramp. She told me the results would take 2 weeks. I asked if it could be faster. She looked at my face and nodded slightly. When I walked out, I looked up at the sky. The sun was too bright. But something inside me felt a little lighter. A small light had started to appear. Bridget's injuries weren't healing. I took her back to the hospital for an X-ray. The results showed a fractured rib. The doctor asked how it happened. She kept her head down, said she fell. The doctor looked at me for a second, then stopped asking. After we left the room, I couldn't hold it in anymore. How long are you going to keep hiding this? I asked. She stayed silent. Where's the compensation money? I asked. Did Kevin take it? She nodded. Tears fell. He said it was for his gambling debts. He transferred everything, not a single cent left. $120,000, gone. She had no card, no cash. Even her phone bill was paid by me. I held her cold hand. I couldn't speak. On the way home, we passed the magnolia tree. A plastic bag was caught in its branches. puffed up by the wind. It looked like it was nodding. I stopped walking. Bridget, I said, move back home, get a divorce. I'll help you. She shook her head hard. Her voice broke. Mom, I'm scared. If I divorce him, he says he'll kill all of us. I asked if she had called the police. She said she did. They came, called it a domestic issue, gave warnings, then left. After that, Kevin only got worse. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath. This time is different, I said. You have medical reports now. You have me. I'm here. I took Bridget's medical records, her injury report, and photos of her bruises to the local police station. The officer who met me was Officer Martinez, early 30s, calm enough, professional. I placed everything on his desk. I'm here to report domestic violence, I said. My son-in-law has been abusing my daughter for years. He went through the documents one by one. His expression slowly changed, more serious, more tight. These were taken at the hospital, he asked. Yes, any witnesses? Neighbors have heard it, I said. But no one wants to get involved. He stayed quiet for a moment. Mrs. Donovan, he said, we can take this case, but you should understand something. These cases are hard to prove and hard to prosecute. You should really get a lawyer. There it was again, a lawyer. I spread my hands slightly. I can't afford one. He nodded, thinking. Then he slid a piece of paper toward me. Legal Aid Center, he said, they're free. I walked out of the station and sat on the steps outside. I read the paper again and again. Free legal help. I didn't know things like that still existed. I folded it carefully and put it in my bag. No matter what, I had to try, for Bridget. And for my house. I followed the address to the Legal Aid Center. The lawyer who met me was Ms. Goldstein, 50s, short hair, direct voice. She read Bridget's medical files in silence, a long silence. Then she said, this is a strong case, but you need to understand something. Once you report this formally, your son-in-law may escalate. You and your daughter need safety measures. I asked what kind. Start with a restraining order, she said. I'll help you file it. She pulled out a form and went through it line by line with me. My handwriting was slow. She waited without rushing me. Near the end, she asked, will your daughter testify? I nodded firmly, yes. Then we apply for the protection order first, she said. Then we move to divorce proceedings. She paused, then added, what about the house? I handed her the receipt from the handwriting analysis payment. She adjusted her glasses and studied it. Then she smiled slightly. This can be used as evidence. Mrs. Donovan, you've done this very carefully. I gave a small, embarrassed smile. Honestly, I said, I just had no choice. When I left the center, something felt steady inside me. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't carrying this alone. 2 weeks later, the handwriting analysis results came back. The conclusion was clear. The submitted sample and the reference sample were not written by the same person. My hands shook when I held the report. I made several copies. One for Ms. Goldstein, one for the developer, one for myself. When Chris saw it, his face changed immediately. He still tried to argue. Even if the signature isn't yours, it was signed by a direct family member. Legally, I cut him off. Real estate transfers require the property owner's consent. I had read that sentence so many times in the property law book. I had written it down, memorized it. Chris had nothing to say. I looked at him. I want the agreement cancelled, and I want a new negotiation. At that moment, the regional manager, Blake, walked in, belly pushed forward, corporate voice turned on. Mrs. Donovan, the compensation plan was approved by the city. We can change it. We understand your daughter's situation. But the money has already been transferred. You should take it up with her. That money was stolen by her husband, I said. You sent it to the wrong recipient. You are responsible. I pulled out my notes. Legal references, pages marked with folded corners. I handed them to him. He didn't even look. He turned and walked away. The meeting ended there, cold, unresolved. But something had already changed. This time, I wasn't guessing anymore. I knew I couldn't fight the developer alone. So I decided to gather the neighbors who had been underpaid. Old Frank was the first to respond. His house was even older than mine. But his compensation was even lower, he said. I'm just an old man. No one helped me sign anything. I signed it myself and still got cheated. Might as well do this together. I printed dozens of flyers. I posted them on every apartment door. The message was simple. We were asking for fair and equal compensation, nothing more. If anyone was interested, meet under the magnolia tree. The next day at 3 p.m., people showed up, more than I expected, more than I had hoped. A group of elderly neighbors stood under the magnolia tree. White hair, cane supported, bent backs. Many had lived there for decades. Some had their signatures forged. Some had been tricked by family members. money already taken by their children or sons-in-law. I stood under the tree and spoke loudly. If you're willing, I said, we can form the Magnolia Group. We're not here to fight. We're here to ask for fairness. Old friend clapped first. I'll be deputy leader, he said. People laughed, some nodded. In that moment, it was clear we were no longer alone. The next morning, the Magnolia Group showed up at the developer's office. More than 10 of us. We stood in a straight line outside the building. Each of us held a cardboard sign, fair compensation, an authorized signature invalid, give us back our homes. I stood at the front, wearing a faded floral shirt, hair tied tightly, calm, unshaken. After a while, reporters arrived. We didn't call them. Someone in the neighborhood must have. A young journalist pushed through the crowd and held a microphone toward me. Mrs. Donovan, why are you protesting here? I looked into the camera. I've lived on this street for 44 years. My house was signed away by my daughter without my consent. The money was taken by her husband and gambled away. The developer says it's not their responsibility. So I want to ask one question. If I can't decide what happens to my own home, who can? That night, the local news aired our protest. Old friend called me, excited. Aaron, you're on TV. I said quietly, being on TV doesn't change anything. He said, at least people know now. That's better than nothing. After the call, I looked out the window. The magnolia tree stood in the dark. Its leaves moved in the wind, soft, restless. I knew this was only the beginning. The harder part was still ahead. The day after the news aired, Kevin showed up. He drove a black pickup truck and parked at the corner of the street. When he stepped out, his leather jacket was half unzipped. A thick gold chain sat on his neck, hair slicked back. He looked like he had stepped out of trouble. He walked straight toward me with a fake smile, but his eyes were cold. Mom, he said, you're embarrassing me. Your face isn't worth much, I said. $120,000 is. He laughed once, short and sharp. That's my money. My wife's compensation is mine. He leaned closer, lowered his voice. Don't push me, old lady. I didn't step back. I looked him straight in the eye. You've been pushing my daughter for 5 years. Today, I'm not afraid of you. Old Frank walked up slowly from the side, leaning on his cane. He stood beside me. Then more neighbors gathered behind us, silent, angry, watching. Kevin looked around, spat on the ground, then got back in his truck and drove off. That night, Bridget cried for a long time. She was afraid he would come after me. I held her, kept my hand on her back. It's okay, I said. He has fists, we have the law. She didn't fully understand, but her breathing slowly calmed. The construction crew moved in. The sound of bulldozers shook the windows. Glass rattled in its frames. I stood under the magnolia tree, watched familiar houses disappear one by one. Brick, wood, broken glass, all piled into small mountains. Dust rolled through the street like effigy. People coughed. The developer announced that the tree would be cut down the next day. It was blocking construction. That night, every member of the Magnolia Group showed up. No one called them. They just came. We brought small stools, sat in a circle under the tree, and held hands around the trunk. The next morning, the crew arrived again. The foreman looked tired. Ladies, he said, don't make this hard. We're just workers. I didn't look at him. I was staring at a carved letter on the trunk. A crooked B. Bridget had carved it when she was 6. I said, this tree is older than your company's license. It's part of Chicago's history. The foreman hesitated, then called his boss. 30 minutes later, Sterling arrived. Suit, clean shoes, controlled voice. He looked down at us. Mrs. Donovan, he said, this tree costs me thousands every day. I can offer extra compensation. I shook my head. This isn't about money. This is my home. He was silent for a long moment. Then he raised his hand, and the crew stepped back. The magnolia tree was still standing for now, but Kevin didn't stop. Every morning, just before sunrise, his black pickup showed up outside my house. He laid on the horn, called Bridget's name through the window. The sound cut through the whole street. Neighbors got tired of it. Someone finally called the police. Officers came. Kevin would leave. The moment they left, he came back. Officer Martinez told me if this continued, we could enforce the restraining order. I told him we already had one. He nodded. Then use it, he said. Don't be afraid of the law. I printed the order and taped it to my front door. The words were clear. No contact, no harassment, no stalking. Kevin showed up again. He saw the paper. He laughed. One piece of paper is supposed to stop me. I stood inside the doorway, looking straight at him. Try it, I said. He stared at me for a long time. For once, he didn't push forward. He muttered a curse, got back in his truck, and drove away. As his car disappeared down the street, I finally exhaled. That piece of paper wasn't just paper. It worked. the developers finally agreed to renegotiate with us. This time, they sent Blake, Chris, and a new legal counsel, Attorney Patel. She was young, wearing black-framed glasses, and spoke without emotion. Ms. Donovan, we need to verify your proof of ownership, she said, pushing her glasses up. I laid everything out on the table, my property deed, household registration, and ID card, a full stack of documents. She flipped through them briefly and pushed the deed back toward me. This isn't enough, we need more original proof. Why isn't your mother's name on the deed? It's under my husband's name. My mother gave me the original land title back then, but I never transferred it, I said. The land title, she asked. It's in an old box. I spent an entire day turning the house upside down. Finally, at the very bottom of a leather suitcase, I found it. A yellowed piece of paper, so fragile it felt like an autumn leaf, one touch away from crumbling. The handwriting was faded but still legible, dated October 12, 1871, signed Woodlawn Street Women's Mutual Aid Association. It stated that this land was jointly purchased by 10 women. My mother's name was right there among them. Patel froze when she saw the land deed. She carefully picked it up, studying it line by line. This is from 1871, she asked. Yes, I said. It was left by my great-grandmother's mother. This can serve as historical evidence of ownership, she said slowly, frowning. But its legal validity will require expert verification. Then let them verify it, I replied calmly, lifting my teacup. I'm not in a hurry. The tea was cold, but I felt warm inside. A week later, the verification results came back. The deed was authentic. Not only that, old Frank had gone to the Chicago Historical Society and found archival records confirming that Woodlawn Street was originally communal property of the Woodlawn Street Women's Mutual Aid Association. 10 women had jointly owned the land. It was one of the earliest forms of women's cooperatives in Chicago. This is a major discovery, Patel said, removing her glasses, her tone serious now. It means the ownership of this land is not individual, but collective. All residents facing demolition may have grounds to demand significantly higher compensation. Not just compensation, I said, pointing at the faded ink on the deed. Our ancestors bought this land together. We should negotiate together too. Blake's face darkened, turning the color of a POD bottom. Kevin found out about the deed and completely panicked. This time, he didn't come alone. He brought 2 men who looked rough and dangerous. They stood at the end of the street, smoking, staring at our house with hostility. Bridget saw them from the window and went pale. She grabbed my arm. Mom, why are they here? Should we call the police? Don't be afraid. I'll talk to them, I said, patting her hand. I opened the door and walked out. When Kevin saw me, he flicked his cigarette to the ground and crushed it under his foot. Old woman, he sneered. You're coming out alone? Aren't you afraid of dying? Why should I be afraid? I said calmly. Take one more step and I'll call the police. The whole street will come out. Do you still want your parents to show their faces in this neighborhood? He took a step forward. I immediately pulled out my phone and showed him the screen. I had already dialed 911, only one tap away from calling. Try me, I said. He stared at me, his eyes full of rage, like he wanted to tear me apart. But the 2 men behind him grabbed his arm and pulled him back, signaling him not to escalate things. In the end, he gritted his teeth, got into the car, and drove away with them. Watching their car disappear down the street, I realized my back was completely soaked in sweat. I went back into the house, and Bridget immediately threw herself into my arms, crying so hard she couldn't speak. I gently patted her back and said, Don't cry. Crying is a sign of weakness. She looked up at me, her eyes swollen like peaches. Mom, you weren't like this before. Back then, whenever something happened, you would always panic and go find my dad to decide everything. I smiled slightly. I used to be like that. It's just that when your dad was alive, all the big decisions in the house were handled by him. I didn't need to step up. My husband has been gone for 5 years. The day he died, I felt like the sky had collapsed. The first time I went to the bank to pay utilities, my hands were shaking so badly I could barely sign my name. The first time I went grocery shopping, I stood in front of a long receipt and calculated everything twice. But slowly, I got used to it. I got used to fixing a leaking pipe on my own, changing light bulbs on my own, making every decision by myself. It turns out many things aren't as difficult as I once thought. I had simply always believed I couldn't do them. Now I know that as long as you are willing to take the first step, nothing is truly impossible. I wiped the tears from Bridget's face and said, From now on, Mom will protect you. She nodded hard and buried her face in my arms. Our situation was being known by more and more people, and the Woodlawn Women's Group kept growing. From the original dozen or so of us, it expanded to more than 30. Not only women from our own Woodlawn Street, but also elderly residents from nearby streets joined us. Their stories were all different. Some had been tricked by their sons into signing demolition agreements, only to have the compensation money taken to buy houses for them. Some had their pensions taken away by sons-in-law, leaving them unable to even pay for medical care. Some were forced out of their homes by daughters-in-law after their husbands passed away. They had all endured in silence until they saw the news about us. Every week, we held meetings under the old magnolia tree. I taught everyone the legal knowledge I had learned, while old Frank read out government documents. I used fallen magnolia leaves as bookmarks, placing them in everyone's notebooks so that when they opened them, they could smell the scent of autumn. A television crew came again, this time for a full feature segment. The female reporter interviewed me under the magnolia tree and asked, "Why do you think women are often at a disadvantage in demolition and relocation cases?" I looked into the camera and said, "Because they are used to handing over decision-making power to men." My daughter did the same. She gave everything to her husband and ended up being abused for 5 years. What I am doing now is helping them understand that they have the right to decide their own lives. After the documentary aired, it triggered a huge response across the city. Many residents called the city government, demanding a full investigation into the unfair practices in the demolition project. The city council also sent a team to conduct an inquiry and summon the developer's boss, Sterling, for questioning. Not long after, the city government issued a correction order, requiring the developer to immediately halt the illegal demolition work and reassess the compensation standards for all affected households. Kevin's father also came. He brought a box of milk, placed it at my doorstep, and said with his head lowered, "Dear sister-in-law, I failed to raise him properly. That boy doesn't understand what he's done. Please don't hold it against him." I picked up the milk and handed it back to him. "Take the milk back, I won't be seeing you." He stood there for a moment, sighed, then turned and left. Old Frank walked over from the side and asked, "You're softening?" I shook my head. "No, milk can be drunk, but the people who hurt us cannot be forgiven." I looked toward the construction site in the distance, knowing in my heart that we were getting closer and closer to victory. Those who once oppressed us would eventually pay the price for what they had done. With attorney Goldstein's help, Bridget formally filed for divorce in court. Kevin refused to agree, claiming Bridget only wanted to take his assets. The court first scheduled a mediation session. The mediator was a middle-aged woman named Miss Kim, who spoke slowly and patiently. She looked at Bridget and asked, "Why do you want a divorce?" Bridget pulled out a thick stack of medical reports and police records, her voice trembling. "He has been beating me for 5 years. This is the evidence." Miss Kim carefully reviewed everything and let out a long sigh before turning to Kevin. "Kevin, what do you have to say?" Kevin kept his head down, picking his fingers. "I don't agree to the divorce. The child is still young, she can't grow up without a father. When you were hitting her, did you think about the child?" Miss Kim's voice sharpened. "Is it good for a child to grow up watching her father beat her mother every day?" Kevin fell silent. The mediation lasted 3 hours, but it ended in failure. Kevin firmly refused to agree to the divorce. We decided to proceed with a formal lawsuit. As we walked out of the mediation room, Bridget held my hand tightly. I could feel her shaking, but her eyes were steady and determined. On the day of the trial, I sat in the gallery, gripping my bag strap so tightly my hands hurt. I was more nervous than Bridget herself. Attorney Goldstein, representing the plaintiff, submitted Bridget's medical reports, police records, and written statements from neighbors one by one to the court. Kevin's lawyer argued that this was merely a domestic dispute, a marital conflict that did not meet the legal definition of domestic violence. The judge looked at Kevin and asked sternly, "Kevin, do you admit that you hit your wife?" Kevin hesitated for a long time. "Sometimes, during arguments, I lose control. And losing control is your justification for hitting someone?" The judge's voice was not loud, but it carried weight. Kevin lowered his head and said nothing more. 2 weeks later, the judgment was issued. The court granted Bridget's divorce from Kevin, awarded custody of the child to Bridget, ordered Kevin to pay $800 per month in child support, and also awarded Bridget $15,000 in compensation for emotional damages. The amount was not large, but it was a ruling of justice. It told every woman suffering from domestic violence that they were not alone, and that the law would protect them. When Bridget received the judgment that day, she cried for the entire afternoon. It wasn't sadness, it was relief. 5 years of nightmares had finally come to an end. I took a fallen magnolia leaf from my notebook and tucked it into the judgment papers. "This leaf is from the century you climbed when you were 6 and scraped your knee," I told her. "Back then, you fell so hard, but you didn't cry for long. This pain now is the same, it will pass too. She held the dried yellow leaf in her hand, her lips trembling as if she wanted to speak but couldn't find the words. After a long silence, she finally choked out, "Mom. Thank you. If it weren't for you, I would never have escaped him in my lifetime." "You don't need to thank me," I said, gently stroking her hair. "It was you who was brave. It was you who chose to stand up and testify against him. From here on, you'll walk your own path. I can't stay by your side forever, but I will always stand behind you and support you." She collapsed into my arms and cried again. But this time, her tears were different, light, clean, almost sweet. Sunlight poured through the window, landing on the judgment papers and on her face, and I knew her life was finally beginning again. Under pressure from the city government, the developer finally agreed to recalculate the compensation standards. After multiple rounds of negotiation, we ultimately secured a rate of $200 per square foot, an increase of $80 from the original offer. All 30-some members of the Woodlawn Women's Group signed the new relocation agreements. This time, the developer didn't dare play any tricks and transfer the compensation directly into everyone's accounts. Old Frank stood under the magnolia tree with his cane, looking toward the direction of his old house and slowly waving his hand. I knew he was saying goodbye to his past life. His wife had passed away last year, and before she died, she often said that once they were relocated, they would buy a smaller home and use the remaining money for their grandson's education. Now, he had finally fulfilled her wish. "Thank you, Aaron," Old Frank said, turning to me. "If it weren't for you, people like us would have just kept being pushed around." "You don't need to thank me," I said with a smile. "This was something we all achieved together. I couldn't have done it alone. Without all of you, I wouldn't have been able to do anything either." The wind passed through the leaves of the old magnolia tree, rustling like applause. We had won. With our own strength, we had fought for the fairness that belonged to us. I used the compensation money to buy a small house not far from the old street. It wasn't large, but it was warm and comfortable. There was also a magnolia tree in the yard, smaller than the one from my old home, but clearly already aged. I cut a dry branch from the old magnolia tree and brought it with me to my new home, placing it in a flower pot by the entrance. It would never sprout again, but it would remind me that we had once lived there, and that we had fought to protect our homes. Old Frank moved in right next door. He bought the exact same unit as mine. Smiling, he said, "Now we're neighbors. We can look out for each other. Just muddle through life together." I rolled my eyes. "Who said I'm muddling through anything with you?" He wasn't offended at all, he just laughed. While unpacking, Bridget helped me arrange my legal books one by one onto the bookshelf. Looking at these books filled with handwritten notes, I felt deeply moved. A few months ago, I was an old woman who couldn't even understand legal language. Now, I had not only won my own case, but also helped so many others. It turns out, it's never too late in life to begin again. As long as you are willing to change, it is never too late. I used the remaining compensation money to rent a small storefront near the neighborhood, and opened a legal aid station for elderly women. On the day we hung up the signboard, Old Frank and the women from the Woodlawn Women's Group all came to help. Attorney Goldstein heard about it, and voluntarily offered to come twice a month to provide free legal consultations. On the other days, I would be there running the place. More and more elderly people came for help, most of them women. Their problems were all kinds of the same. What to do if a son took over the house? What to do if a son-in-law borrowed pension money and never returned it? What to do when inheritance disputes arose after a spouse passed away? Whenever I didn't understand a legal issue, I wrote it down in a notebook and asked Attorney Goldstein when she came. Old Frank volunteered to become a helper. He handled reception, poured tea, and chatted with the elderly visitors. "I'm retired anyway," he said. "Might as well be useful." I told him, "Fine, I'll feed you every day." Watching those who arrived burdened with worry leave with relief and smiles, I felt deeply fulfilled. I knew that what I was doing mattered. Kevin never appeared again. I heard he had accumulated a large gambling debt, was being hunted by creditors, and had run away quietly. No one knew where he went. His father occasionally came to visit his granddaughter. Each time, he brought a lot of snacks and toys. Bridget let him see the child, but she wouldn't let him into the house. They would sit on the bench at the end of the street and talk for a while. The old man would leave the things behind and then quietly walk away. Once, Bridget looked at her father's back and said to me, "Mom, I hate him." I shook my head. Hating someone is too exhausting. Don't hate him, but don't forget either. Remember what he did to you, so you never let anyone hurt you like that again. She nodded, broke open a cookie, split it in half, and handed one piece to me, while keeping the other for herself. Sunlight fell on her face, and her smile was calm. I knew she had already let go of the past hatred and started a new life. Those who once hurt us would eventually be forgotten by time, and we would go on living with our scars, but also with courage. Bridget decided to retake her nursing qualification exam. She had once been a nurse, but had given it up for 5 years to stay home and raise her child. Now she was going to reclaim her profession. I fully supported her decision. Every night, she studied at her desk while I sat beside her, peeling apples and pouring her a glass of milk. Sometimes she studied until very late, and I would just stay with her in silence. Hard work paid off. She was admitted to a community college nursing program. On the first day of school, I sent her off. She stood at the entrance with a new backpack, turned back, and smiled at me. "Mom, aren't you coming in to take a look?" "I won't go in," I said. "I might get lost. You go ahead and study well." She smiled and nodded, then turned and walked into the building. Watching her back, I thought of the first day she ever went to school. Back then, she also carried a small backpack and kept looking back at me every few steps. Now she had grown up, strong and independent. The wind passed through the ginkgo trees on campus, rustling the leaves. I stood under the tree, my heart full of pride. The legal aid station became more and more well-known, and even elderly people from neighboring communities came for help. One day, a woman in her 70s arrived. Her hair was completely white, and she walked with a cane, limping slightly. Her name was Margaret. After her husband passed away, her son took over her house and kicked her out. She became homeless and could only stay in a relative's basement. She had gone to the community office and even the police, but nothing worked. Her son claimed the house belonged to him and that she had no right to live there. After hearing her story, my heart sank. I immediately contacted Attorney Goldstein, who agreed to take the case pro bono and help her sue her son for unlawful eviction. In the end, the court ruled in Margaret's favor. Her son was forced to vacate the property through enforcement proceedings. Margaret returned to her home and cried for a long time while holding onto the doorframe. She grabbed my hand and said emotionally, "Aaron, thank you, you saved my life. If it weren't for you, I would have died outside." I gently held her shoulders and said, "It wasn't me who saved you. It was you who saved yourself. You didn't give up. You stood up bravely to defend your own rights." The Woodlawn Women's Group was awarded the title of Community Heroes of the Year. The district invited me to the stage to give a speech, but I refused. "This isn't my achievement," I said. "It belongs to the magnolia tree." We just sat under it. We never left. Old Frank went in my place. He wore a brand new outfit, his hair neatly combed, looking full of energy. Standing on stage with a microphone, he said, "The tree may be gone, but the roots remain. The roots of all of us have been buried in this land for decades. You can't pull them out. As long as we stand together, no one can push us around." The hall erupted into thunderous applause. I sat at home watching him on television and couldn't help but laugh. Bridget leaned against my shoulder and said with a smile, "Mom, you didn't know this, did you? Old Frank used to have a crush on you." I froze for a moment, then turned to look out the window. The old magnolia tree had already been cut down, leaving only a low stump. But the next year, a small green shoot had unexpectedly sprouted beside it. Maybe by next spring, it would grow branches again. Nothing could stop it. Bridget made new friends at school, another single mother who had also returned to education. They attended classes together, ate in the cafeteria together, and complained together about how difficult the assignments were. I noticed Bridget had changed. She started wearing skirts. In the past, Kevin wouldn't allow it, saying she had no reason to dress up for anyone. Now she bought many beautiful skirts and wore a different one every day. "I don't wear skirts for anyone else," she said. "I wear them for the person in the mirror." She had gained a little weight, and her complexion had improved. There was always a smile on her face now. She was no longer the timid woman with dim, hesitant eyes. One evening, she suddenly said to me, "Mom, I want to move back in with you." I smiled, "Sure. I've kept your room for you. The blankets were just sun-dried yesterday." She hugged me happily and kissed my cheek. Watching her so joyful, I felt that all the hardship had been worth it. My daughter had finally become the person she wanted to be. A charitable foundation heard about our legal aid station and proactively contacted us, offering funding to help us expand. I chose a new office location near the old street. not far from the stump of the magnolia tree. Every time I passed by, I would stop and look at the new sprout. It was growing quickly, already as tall as my knee, soft, green, full of life. Old Frank looked at it and sighed. "Look at that, it's still alive." I smiled. It doesn't want to die. And neither do we. As long as we have breath left, we have to live well. The new office was fully renovated, much larger than before. We added new desks, chairs and bookshelves, and even set up a reception area. On opening day, all the women from the Woodlawn group came. We cut the ribbon together and shared a cake. Watching the lively crowd, I felt a deep sense of hope. I knew our legal aid station would help even more people in need. Just like the young sprout from the old magnolia tree, it would keep growing, getting stronger, and one day it would shelter others from the wind and rain. The Chicago city government decided to build a community garden on the original site of Woodlawn Street, and to preserve the new shoot of the old magnolia tree. A protective fence was installed around the sapling, with a sign that read, "Protected Heritage Regeneration Resource, do not damage." I stood beside the new shoot and gently touched its leaves. They were thin, soft, and so tender they could be crushed with a pinch. But I knew it would grow. It would grow into a towering tree, like its mother once did, shading half the street. Bridget graduated and passed her nursing qualification exams with excellent results. She found a job at a major hospital in the city. She looked especially beautiful in her white coat. She posted a photo of herself in uniform on social media. With the caption, "Mom, I'm on duty," I replied with 3 words, "Do your best." Looking at my daughter's confident smile in the photo, I thought of myself 44 years ago, when I first put on the nurse's uniform. Back then, I too was full of hope for the future. Just like her, time really does fly. One generation grows old, another grows up. But some things never change. Kevin's father became seriously ill. In his final days, he asked to see his granddaughter one last time. After a long hesitation, Bridget finally agreed and took her daughter to see him. When she came back, she was quiet for a long time. I asked her what happened. She said, "He kept saying sorry. He said he was sorry to me, sorry to the child." I asked, "Did you accept his apology?" She thought for a long while and said, "No, I don't accept it. What he did to me can't be erased with a single apology. But I don't hate him anymore. He's just a pitiful old man who failed to raise his son properly his whole life." I hugged her. She was already taller than me. I no longer needed to stand on my toes to hold her. She had truly grown up, learned to let go, learned to make peace with the past. That's how life is. We will always meet people who hurt us. We can't live in hatred forever. It only ends up hurting ourselves. Letting go isn't about forgiving others, it's about freeing yourself. Outside the window, the sunlight was warm as it fell over us. Everything felt like it was slowly getting better. With the foundation's support, our legal aid station was expanded into the Senior Women's Rights Service Center. We hired 2 full-time lawyers and 1 social worker, allowing us to provide more professional assistance to a greater number of elderly people. Attorney Goldstein retired. She didn't go off to enjoy a quiet retirement. Instead, she became our resident advisor. Offering free legal services, I placed an extra desk for her in the office, with a POD posthouse on it, something that only needs a bit of water to survive, incredibly resilient, full of life. Frank was appointed Chief Reception Officer, responsible for opening the door, pouring tea, and talking with visitors. He had a gentle temperament and endless patience, and the elderly clients all liked speaking with him. Many of them would finish their legal consultations, and then stay for long conversations about everyday life. Every morning, I arrive at the center early, open the doors, and clean up. Watching sunlight pour through the windows and seeing the elderly clients leave with smiles on their faces fills me with a deep sense of happiness. I started learning law at 67 and founded this service center at 69. It turns out life really does have infinite possibilities. One day, a real estate developer came to see me. He said he greatly admired what I had built and wanted to hire me as a relocation coordinator. Offering a very generous salary, I refused. I said, "I'm just an ordinary old woman, not a demolition company." I stood up back then because my neighbors and I were being bullied. Now I run this service center to help elderly people like us who are being taken advantage of. I won't work for developers. He didn't get angry, he just smiled, left a business card, and said, "Mrs. Donovan, I respect your choice. If you ever need anything, call me. I put the card in a drawer. I didn't throw it away, but I didn't call either. I knew I couldn't forget my original purpose. I couldn't let money turn me into the kind of person I once stood against. Frank heard about it and gave me a thumbs up. Eileen, well done. I knew you wouldn't be bothered. I smiled. Of course, money matters, but some things matter more. Our center hosted the district's first Senior Women's Legal Awareness Week. We set up a stage in the public square, invited lawyers to give talks, handed out brochures, and offered on-site legal consultations for elderly residents. The turnout far exceeded our expectations. We didn't have enough chairs, so many people stood to listen. Most of them were elderly women with white hair, some leaning on canes, some holding grandchildren. Their eyes carried confusion, expectation, and something familiar to me, a quiet refusal to accept injustice. When it was my turn to speak, I only said a few words. I started learning law at 67, because no one was there to help me then. You don't need to learn law the way I did, but you do need to know this. The law is on your side. If someone bullies you, don't endure it. Come to us, we will help you. The crowd erupted into warm applause. Looking at those hopeful faces, I knew what we were doing mattered. And I would keep doing it, until the day I could no longer stand. Today, I sit on the balcony of my new home, brewing a pot of tea. The sunlight is good, warm on my skin. I take out the century-old land deed. It is sealed in plastic film and locked inside a safe. I don't dare touch it often, afraid it might crumble. From next door, I hear Frank's voice. Eileen, my jasmine on the balcony is blooming, come take a look. I smile and answer him, walking over with my teacup. His jasmine is in full bloom, snow-white petals, heavy fragrance in the air. A petal falls into my tea. It tastes bitter, but sweet with scent. Bridget has come back with her daughter. The little girl, with her hair tied into two tiny pigtails, runs over and grabs my leg. Grandma, I want to go to the swings. I crouch down and pat her head. All right, Grandma will take you to the park. She pulls my hand and drags me downstairs. I look back and see Bridget standing at the door, smiling as she watches us. Sunlight pours from behind her, shining on her white coat like a halo. The new shoot of the old magnolia tree is now as tall as a person. No one waters it. It pushes itself up from the soil, quietly, persistently turning green. When the wind blows, its leaves rustle. My name is Eileen Donovan. I am 69 years old. I am no longer the trembling old woman, who once could only cling to her daughter's hand. I learned how to tear up contracts, how to fight lawsuits, how to stand my ground in front of bulldozers. I am not extraordinary. I simply had 30 other old women standing behind me, and a magnolia tree that refused to die. The tree's gone, but its roots remain. And as long as the roots remain, there is always hope.